Once I was heading for a spiritual retreat with some confirmees over a weekend, and we all departed from church at the same time in different vehicles. But I didn't have anybody with me in my car because I was taking a bunch of supplies with me. Only a few blocks away from the church after we had left, I got to a four-way stop, and I arrived there at the same time as another car, a big bucky. And where I'm from, the rule of the road is that you yield to the right. So since he was to my left and we arrived at the same time, I decided to make my turn. A few minutes later, I noticed that this bucky was making all the same turns that I was making. And it was a man with two young kids in his car, probably around 7 and 10 years old. A few turns later still, I realized this guy was definitely following me, and he was so close to me I couldn't tell where my bumper stopped and his bumper began, and he made every single turn that I made. Eventually I pulled up to a robot and he managed to get into the lane next to me so that he could see me and let me know just how frustrated he was, throwing all manner of hand gestures and shouting at the top of his lungs. Not that I could hear what he was saying, because I turned my radio up. So I thought I'd have a little bit of fun with this guy, because he didn't realize that where I was going was an hour out of Pretoria. So I thought I would see how far he was willing to go. About 3/4 of the way there, this guy eventually realized, in the middle of nowhere, that I wasn't going to be stopping anytime soon. So he eventually made a U-turn and head back the way he came. Now this guy was so upset that I had cheated him at the four-way stop out of whatever he believed that I cheated him out of, maybe a few seconds of his day. So much so that he was willing to follow me 45 minutes out of Pretoria so that he could let me know about it, adding an hour and a half to his own day. What did he get out of it? And here's the thing, I didn't have to know much about him or to know anything that was happening in his life, or to know all the things that day that had made his day frustrating, to know that his anger had nothing to do with me. He was angry long before he even got in his car. I'm sure you've seen something like this before, not necessarily in traffic. It happens everywhere all the time, at the shops, in schools, at the office, on the internet. There's this suppressed, boiling rage that some people carry around with them everywhere that they go. Every time I go on social media, all the posts I see across all platforms are all about political unrest, injustice, and inequality, and how the world is supposedly falling apart. If it's not that, it's video of someone being assaulted, or of protesters burning a homeless man's possessions. I'll be honest, sometimes it even gets me down. Because people don't even know why they're angry. Yet they think what they're doing in response to that anger somehow matters. One of the videos I saw recently is of a guy from Cape Town who's calling himself an influencer, who, let's be honest, is quite a cavalier term that's thrown around these days, unfortunately. And for about 6 minutes straight, he went on about how oppressive the government is and that they are violating our human rights by enforcing a lockdown. And then complaining about how nobody else seems to be angry about it, and how we should all get angry if we want to see change happen. There's a passage in Genesis 21, verse 14 to 19 that says, "Early the next morning, Abraham took some food and a skin of water and gave them to Hagar. He set them on her shoulders and then sent her off with the boy. She went on her way and wandered in the desert of Beersheba. When the water in the skin was gone, she put the boy under one of the bushes. Then she went off and sat down about a bow shot away, for she thought, 'I cannot watch the boy die.' And as she sat there, she began to sob." As we read and explore the Bible, we always find common themes, things that pop up over and over again. People asking the same questions, people struggling with the same issues. We see One of them here in this passage. Hagar has a baby with her in the desert, and she runs out of water. With none in sight, she gives up and just accepts that the baby is going to die. She just can't stand to watch. And Hagar has lost hope. Hagar is scared, and Hagar for a brief moment loses faith. At least loses faith in God. How often do you give up or lose hope? Your immediate reaction might be, not very often, but what if it's more than you think? Let me start by saying, some things matter and some things don't. How often do you find yourself worrying about things that you can't change? Feeling stressed or anxious about situations that are out of your control? When we do this, we are placing our faith not in God, but in fear. We are choosing fear and anxiety over God. We are choosing fear and anxiety to be our God, the one in whom we place our trust. We are unknowingly saying, God, I don't think you are in control of this situation. We are unknowingly saying, God, I don't believe in your saving and redemptive power. So fear, I choose you instead. This is a situation that Hagar found herself in. So God makes her aware of him because he'd been there all along. She just didn't notice right away. We carry on from verse 17. God heard the boy crying, and the angel of God called to Hagar from heaven and said to her, "What is the matter, Hagar? Do not be afraid. God has heard the boy crying as he lies there. Lift the boy up and take him by the hand, for I will make him into a great nation." Then God opened her eyes, and she saw a well of water. So she went and filled the skin with water and gave the boy a drink. Emotions and the way we respond to them are a choice. If we look at the language we use on a daily basis, we say things like, "That really made me angry," or "You're really upsetting me now." Imagine not saying "You're making me angry," but rather, "I'm getting angry at you." When we say things make us angry, we have vetoed our ownership of our own impulses and responses to the world around us. We've just vetoed our opportunity to bring Christ into the world. And if we don't decide how we are going to respond and to deal with things, then who will? Emotions shouldn't control you, they should prompt you. Emotions shouldn't control you, they should prompt you. Whenever talking about this kind of thing in biblical or church circles, people always point to Jesus flipping the tables in the temple because people were defiling it, which he did do. But let's not reach out for Jesus to support what we already believe. Let's rather reach to Jesus to help us decide what we should believe. If the lens that I'm looking through is a kaleidoscope, I'm going to see colors, no matter what I do. Mark 3 verse 1 to 6 says, "Again he entered the synagogue, and a man was there with a withered hand. And they watched Jesus to see whether he would heal him on the Sabbath, so that they might accuse him. And he said to the man with the withered hand, 'Come here.' And he said to them, 'Is it lawful on the Sabbath to do good or to do harm, to save life or to kill?' But they were silent. And he looked around at them with anger, grieved at the hardness of heart. And he said to the man, 'Stretch out your hand.' He stretched it out, and his hand was restored. The Pharisees went out and immediately held counsel with the Herodians against him, how to destroy him." Now, this was originally written in Greek. And the word for anger that is used is in something called the aorist tense. It has a slight nuance to it. This is basically a fancy way of saying that the feeling passed through him. It came on him, and then it went away. The point is this: there is a response to anger that is petty and selfish. It's a whole state of being that is easily offended. It's a state of aggression that sits below the surface. And there is a response to anger that is essentially all about us. Our pride, our ego, all the ways that we can protect and prop up our selfish little kingdoms. But that isn't what is happening here with Jesus. Jesus has identified himself with an injustice. He's angry about something larger than himself. There's something divine about his anger. Because some things are worth getting angry about. So what does Jesus do? Is flipping tables going to heal the man's hand? Some anger is actually healthy and necessary, which is more disturbing? A God who gets angry, or a God who can see exploitation and abuse and injustice and not get angry? Jesus' anger led to an act of healing and restoration. Jesus' anger made things better. Because Jesus chose how to respond to it. It didn't control him. It prompted him. Matthew 10 verse 34 says, "Don't think that I've come to bring peace to the earth. I haven't come to bring peace, but a sword." Now, for a lot of people, this verse tends to turn their image and understanding of Jesus upside down in a very uncomfortable way. I thought the whole idea of Jesus was to bring peace, to seek and to save the lost, to liberate us from oppression. And this is all true. There's a strategy in counseling, in psychotherapy. Most of the time, you want to lead people to insights about themselves, to bring about positive change or positive reinforcement. But it doesn't always work. There's a strategy that is not about leading people to insights about themselves. It's not about telling people the right things or asking them the right questions. For some people, what you need to do is not give them the right psychoanalysis, but rather to give them a psychoanalysis that will rupture something inside of them. Something that will make them go, "Whoa, I need to make a change." Something to be a fuel or to light a fuse. Something that brings about positive change. When Jesus was around, he took many violent actions against society of his time, and by extension, society in our time. He didn't hurt anyone physically. He didn't encourage or incite people to do violent things, to protest or brawl in the streets, or set homeless people's possessions on fire. That wouldn't make things better. But what he did was inherently violent. He brought about an insurrection, a political uprising that challenged the status quo to such an opposite extreme that it caused something inside to rupture. He lit the fuse. What Jesus says in Matthew chapter 3 is that the world is so out of order and far off track that he came to turn it upside down. The world was so backwards that to an unjust and backward system, his peaceful actions were violent. And they made things better. There is a response to anger that is not about us. There is a response to anger that is divine and and just and righteous. One that is about God and His kingdom and what is right. There's a divine response to anger and to all of our emotions. So may you come to know that God is in control. You can trust Him with the things that you can't control. May you come to realize that we can respond to God instead of the world. And may you come to be like Jesus, experiencing divine emotion that make the world a better place.